Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm here with two of our filmmakers, and I'd like them to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Ivan Ghazali. I am the writer and the head of story for the film The Little Persimmon.
Hi everybody, I'm Romain Pham. I'm a filmmaker, writer and director of the film Vegetarian Beef Skewers that I made with my mom in France, Paris. Okay.
Thanks so much, both. So let's start with an easy question. What was your inspiration for making your film? Feel free to speak to the concept itself or the format that you ended up choosing, and tell us a little bit about how the idea came to life. Ivan, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, so this project was done maybe about a year ago, like July 2024. It was part of the Asian in Animation program, AIA Immersive Lab. It's their inaugural project that they were doing. And so with this project, they essentially put a lot of Asian and animation members together to produce a short film. So we have a lot of restriction in that regard. Is that I think we only have about 9 days to do it, and we will have about 44 artists to work on it, and we basically kind of work backward from that, meaning like because of those time and resource limit, that's how we able to not able to, but that's how we approach making the short that way. Yeah.
All right. On my side, it's literally the opposite. I was by myself the whole process, and I think to start at the beginning, growing up in France was something being mixed Vietnamese because my father is French. So I think part of my life I've been trying to become basically white and to really like adapt to the way of being in France. And this has led to me doing the same in my art. And up until this film that you just been seeing, I've never I had never touched onto the topic of my Vietnamese roots. And I was like kind of hovering around making films with making documentaries about other people that were like other ethnicities in Asia, or making fictional films that were not close to my stories. And at one point, a friend of mine told me to actually stop turning around. I mean, going around the topic and actually start filming my own story and my mom, because um, that one friend was really aware of our story and how it was influencing me. So I took up the advice and I started actually filming my mom and kind of documenting her, her life and our lives in France. And this became kind of a way for me to learn more about it, to learn more about our Vietnamese roots, and also to it became kind of a love language between us, a way for me to understand more deeply what she was experiencing and what I was experiencing as well. It was at the same time a way to share and also very introspective. And I kind of realized that my camera was becoming a way of reaching out and a way of breaking boundaries that we set ourselves. And this film was born from, like, in a very organic way from this approach. It was just at first a way for me to reach out, and then it became a film. And I'm actually in the process of making a bigger version of that film. You can say that the vegetarian beef skewers is kind of a premise, and I want to make it into like a maybe a feature length documentary that would approach and dive deeper into the topics of our family's memory and history, and what it is to become, I mean, to grow up Vietnamese in a, I'd say, European or white environment. Voilà.
Thank you so much for that. Both of your films, Vegetarian Beef Skewers and Little Persimmon, highlight intergenerational dynamics and connections, from cooking in the kitchen to honoring ancestors through food. You touched on it a little bit, but tell us more about, in what ways do you think your film, by specifically centering around food, helps the audience explore themes of sacrificial love and cultural preservation?
With our film, probably the theme of cultural preservation will be what we're zeroing in, even though it's not super like conscious when we were making it. Honestly, like I mentioned, we only have very few days to get it done. But that being said, like I was very as I had a story, I was responsible getting the story up to the standard of what the AIA was looking for, and I was very um, I was looking for a specific voice, meaning like specific, or even a um, specific personal story that we have, and one of our lead, have a certain specific Viet culture that we're thinking, oh, it could be good to go around like death anniversary celebrations, and then we sort of like leaning on that, and that's basically like how we're sort of like seeing the food as a cultural preservation, as opposed to actually, and perhaps it's kind of common also to, to use food as a way to honor family member. That's how we sort of like come around to that.
All right. So on my side, I think it goes way back, my relationship with food, because so as I said, growing up, we were kind of like forced to become French, whether it is by the institutions and the French like kind of racism and ways of integrating the minorities in the society, but also from our families that wanted us to have like successful lives, to like integrate ourselves. And I think, and that's also why none of us, and by us I mean me and my like cousins, all of my generation, I'd say, in the family, none of us have learned Vietnamese growing up. We only spoke French, and that's like a very showcasing thing. You know, it's really like explicit, and I think the only thing that's always been here and that's always stayed with us was the food. You know, it was our main link to our roots, was the main thing that linked us to our parents and their history, whether we were mixed or both parents Vietnamese. And I think we all have this, kind of link to it because of the way it's being used as a way to share history, to share moments, whether it is at the New Year, Lunar New Year, or whether it is at like just family gatherings. And I think this is why, um, I mean, unconsciously, I dove into the film by making it into food, by focusing it around food, because that was my entryway into my Vietnamese roots. That was my way of actually um, reconnecting first, you know, just like learning about the recipes, because I think my family's recipes, just like every single Vietnamese family, uh, my family has their own recipe, and it's different than the ones that you can eat at the restaurants. And by actually learning them, I started to realize that everything my culture could give me, and I started to realize that by learning the recipes, I was actually working the memory of my family and all of the how it was passed down by generations of women before my mom. And I think that's why the film focuses on food as a main element.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So, just as we see communal cooking as a form of love and connection, food can also serve as a portal to traumatic history and forgotten past. It can be a reminder of the scarcity of food in times of war and escape. It also stirs up memories of loss and disconnect. So, in by contrast to the last question, how do you think food helps anchor conversations that are otherwise really difficult to talk about? How did you find that balance in your art?
Um, that's an interesting question because we didn't really. I guess at least the intent was for my end as a head of story is that picturing her, picturing the main character as a 9-year-old Vietnamese girl. It's essentially a character study, and her task and her objective in this movie is how getting the persimmon is her way to honoring the death anniversary of her grandpa. So and and I hope, like, we're not necessarily spelling things out, and she might do, getting the fruit, the person's not really understanding why, like as little kids usually do, they just kind of do the thing that they feel they need to do. But in the end, it sort of hit her on an emotional level, that we sort of kind of leaving it a little bit open-ended, that yeah, so it was nothing really specific that we were thinking of, but I think it was just, at least for me, it's a character study observations, which is always fascinating to see, like, what sort of like the mindset that they have when they just kind of do things automatically, but maybe once they completed the task that they thought it needs to be done, and it might hit them in a personal level.
I think since you share these common roots in your culture, you will understand this as well. But food has always been the comfort, from our parents and for us, and from every single family member. And having just traveled to Vietnam for the first time, I just realized how much it's important. And I think the number of times I heard Andy, which means you have to eat, is like, I can't even count it. It's, I think, more than 100 times in 2 weeks. And it just tells how much food is, let's say, a celebration. And I think the best comment I've ever had on my film, Vegetarian Beef Skewers, was coming from my Vietnamese teacher, actually. So I'm taking Vietnamese classes, and she saw the film and she told me, it's a beautiful film because you are talking about things that are really sad, but because you are making food with your mom, the moment is not sad. And I think it speaks. I didn't even realize it before she told me, and I think it speaks to the way I would like to be using food, and I think also the way I would like to be using my arts and cinema as a way to maybe add some comfort, to all of the pain, because we all come from a painful background with a lot of sadness. Our collective history is, let's say, stained by war and by exile and by pain. And I think the way we've always been comforted in this is food. And um, it's influenced my art because I think I will never be able to give back such delicious food to my family because they cook so much way better than me. But I think I may be able someday to give them a film, and that could be a way for me to help them and help myself process and just bring some healing. So to me, this film, and that's why it's also named after the food, is just like the way my family would give me food. This is me giving them the film and actually trying to show a beautiful side of our culture despite all of the pain.
Yeah, I'd love to do a follow-up actually. Speaking of healing, how did you grow as a filmmaker and as a person while making your film?
Yes. Go ahead, Ivan.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'll start with Ivan.
No worries. I Oh, that's yeah. How long do we have here? But it took me quite a while, and even when tackling this subject, when I was tasked to be the head of story for this short, I have to be a lot more confident in my decisions making, especially in animations. A lot of the stuff that you need to do, it's predetermined, meaning like you need to be very confident with your decision making, because it's once it's decided, then it's gonna it gets you can really basically reverse the process. So it it I think I have a lot knowledge in filmmaking, specifically in animation too. But it's one thing to know; it's another thing to actually doing it. And this project in particular forces me to grow as a filmmaker, and I always feel very thankful of that because it forces me to be very decisive in my decision making. And also, I don't know if this is familiar with you guys, especially for coming from Asian culture, we are taught to be modest, and it's very interesting to be like to be okay with your own convictions. Actually, like decides to make like firm decisions, and it I'm still learning about that. So it's been fascinating journey, and having this film to be part of the Vietnamese film festival is really uh, affirming our like what, we did a good job, that it's actually working, and it gives me more confidence, and I hope gives other artists in the show that the short that we did, give them more confidence.
I think I can relate so much to what you just said, Ivan, to what like our culture pushes us to be, like in which ways it wants us to be shaped. And to me, I think it was more than modesty, it was about being vulnerable. And making this film, I mean, as a filmmaker, you can always hide yourself behind like other topics, like talk about other social issues or filming someone else. But on that one film, I couldn't do this because I'm literally in front of the camera and this is my voiceover speaking. This is literally my feelings being put in front of the screen. And I think, to be fair, it was done in quite a violent way because like it was the first time for me to be in front of the camera. And I think it was like kind of kicking the door open, and I needed to do it this way, and I think that's maybe the way I do things. But ever since, I would say that the door has been opened, and I'm on a path to actually um, accept my my vulnerable sides, and I'm on a path to. I mean, this path has led me to. I mean, travel to Vietnam for the first time 2 years after making the film, and I think I'm still on that path, and I think it's a lifelong journey to actually realize that what matters the most is what we are feeling deep down. And especially as artists, I realized that making a film is not an outward journey, but it's an inward one. And it's about diving deeper into what we feel and how we have lived our lives and how we can share it with like the audience. And I don't know specifically how it's gonna affect my art, and I haven't been making any. I mean, I've been writing, but I haven't been shooting any fictional or documentary ever since. But I'm kind of expecting to see how this is leading.
Yeah, it's actually a really great segue into another question I have, which is what are some of the most difficult aspects of your film's production, and how do you think you overcame those obstacles?
I think I was alluding it a little bit earlier too. Is that because the way the program was designed, we had to make a short film within about a minute or two of total running time, and we had about 9 days to produce it, and especially with animations, a lot of undertaking. So, and I think I mentioned before that as a head of story, I was responsible for creating the story and also managing the storyboard artists to make the films. And we only, like, I think for the production part, we only have like 3 days to do it. But luckily, with the story development, we have about a month to do so. But even then, and I was as a head of story, I was trying to be trying to get a lot of consensus from the department leads, and I was a lot more. I was very interested in getting a lot more like specific stories and personal stories, and from there, I think there was just a lot of like quick decisions making, which I am not accustomed to do that. Um, and it was very interesting. It's a lot of like stress times to do it, and but I think at the end it grows me a lot as an artist. And if anything, I always thought like a lot of my crew member, some would say like, oh, I wish we have more time. Let's, I wish we have like 2 more days. I wish we have more this and that. But I always say like, you know what, even the big studio like Disney, Pixar's, or DreamWorks, they still have 4 years and X amount of $1 million, but at the end of the day, they still have to make decisions because they have a release date. So I kind of equate that to that. So even if it's like very unconventional in terms of like getting the movie produced in less than ideal time, we're actually glad that was the case because we know we cannot get it done, and it was an interesting journey just to get the movie done as fast as possible without sacrificing good story, because that was my biggest concern as well. But I hope that answers that question.
I think to me, the most difficult part was actually telling such an intimate story, and I also had time limits for the film because this one part of my bigger project was supposed to be submitted at a contest or a festival in France, and it was supposed to be running for 3 minutes and a half. So I had to be telling a very intimate and personal story in that time. So during the editing, I would say we cut out a lot of things, and I think we made a lot of sacrifices that make the film maybe not as, let's say, sensitive or maybe um, intimate as we would like to. So that's also why I. It's not a big deal because there will be a longer one. But yeah, basically when you're in front of the camera and you're also filming and you're also editing, I mean, I wasn't editing, but I was, with the editor. It's just like it becomes so weird to be in all of these same places and all of your feelings being in you and in front, and it's just kind of like a storm, of feeling. And I was so overwhelmed during the whole process. I think the whole maybe months we've been making the film, um, and I think it goes with what I was just saying about kicking the door open, just like so many emotions. And um, yeah, that's I think that was the most difficult part.
Yeah, and taking in all of these difficulties and all of the positive growth that you're having, are there any future projects that you're thinking about working on that you might want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, thanks to the program that AIA was building, I'm actually have a couple of projects that I have in mind. One short that I'm thinking about making. Then I actually have more confidence to do that, and it's like, what, that experience is not that bad. But it's also with the support with the organizations give me a lot of like they give us a lot of support to make it. So if anything, like, oh, let me see if I can get that kind of similar support. But what if I were to do it by myself? And that's also been a bit challenging. But that being said, like, because I have gone through that process and gaining more confidence out of it, I would like to make more projects. And like I said, I have a short project that I'm queuing up, and I hope I'll get to make it sooner.
So on my side, I can talk about two of my projects. The first one is called La Moon, like the moon, and it's going to be a short film and maybe a feature film, fictional ones. That's diving deeper into the topics of being Asian, I mean Vietnamese, in the suburbs of Paris. With I don't know if you've heard of the culture in the banlieue. Maybe you've seen some movies. So this is where I grew up in, and that's the part where I would say it's the melting pot in France. And in this melting pot, Vietnamese people are always forgotten, and Asian in general. It's always about being the black people and the people from North Africa and the white people. and there hasn't been much films. There hasn't been any films, to be fair, about the Asian people in the suburbs. So my film is going to be focusing around that and around a young woman who wants to become a Muay Thai fighter, a Thai boxing professional fighter, and she's inherited the Muay Thai from her father, and it represents her Asian roots and her distance to that and the violence it comes with, but also how beautiful this violence and let's say the whole history can be, and how she can benefit from actually embracing that part of her. And in this French and suburbs environment, I would say. The film is bound to be shot if we get all of the fundings by the end of this year, and um, I hope I hope I will be able to show you soon. And I would also like to talk about the longer version of the vegetarian biscuits. That's going to be called 94 Saigon, which means 94 to Saigon. And 94 is my area I grew up in the suburbs of Paris, and Saigon is my mother's hometown. And the film aims to actually create a bridge between my suburb and her town, kind of a poetic and artistic bridge, which will involve vegetarian discourse inside of the longer films, and we'll actually dive deeper into maybe other ways of making bridges that are not food. I would like to maybe explore poetry, maybe explore origamis, maybe explore flowers. It's something that I'm trying to write at the moment, and I think I'm quite um, I'm quite happy with what I'm working with at the moment, and I'm sure I will find some beautiful things to tell.
We're really excited to see what you both come up with. As we round out our time together, my last question for you is, what do you hope resonates with the audience most when seeing your short?
Um, I I guess in terms of like I wonder if I guess in terms of what audience would think of what considered to be an Asian movie, and we were working really hard to find um, a universal theme or event that could be applicable to any culture. We pick that anniversary as our like a point that it's not your standard sort of like intergenerational trauma stories, which is quite common and needs to be brought up more. But we were trying to be a little bit more unique. And that being said, so I'm hoping that we can have more diverse, Southeast Asian stories that are not just about what people assume about that culture. Specifically, especially with Vietnamese culture, there's such a long history with American and Vietnam, and we'll be kind of, and I hope this story that is not necessarily a common that you'll find in most Vietnamese movie, but something that there's another lens that we can also celebrate from a different side of the other side of the Vietnamese culture. So, and if anything, if there is a takeaway, will be that like it's not just about a certain stories that is just that what people know and assume about that culture. Just opening up more stories and about that culture.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page, Ivan. I think when I was approaching the film, I've always been telling my friends, my editors, the editors of the film, and the team, actually the shooting team as well, that I want this movie to be a celebration. And at first, they were quite confused because they knew what it was talking about. They knew it was about trauma. They knew it was about exile and war and everything. And to me, of course, my history was, let's say, started in trauma, in my mother's trauma, in my family's, of course. But growing up, I didn't see it this way. For me, it was just a celebration. It was just like good food, good people, just people laughing out loud and making jokes, and aunties being quirky, and uncles being grumpy, and that's like, this is what Vietnam is to me, you know. And I think this is what I want the audience to be to be feeling when they see my film, because of course there's trauma, of course there's going to be pain, and it's important for me to talk about those topics. Okay, it's like we have to, let's say, talk about this in order to actually discover the celebration that it is. And that's, I'd say, not only my film, but also I think my artistic journey is to learn how to properly tell our painful history, and then to maybe put some colors on it, maybe add some joy to it, and maybe try to dive deeper into in which ways we can celebrate our cultures. And I think if I can achieve that, my films would be a success to me. That's what I hope to be making, and I hope that by having these intentions for my work and my art, um, maybe we could create bridges and create a link between all of our communities around the world. And it's very meaningful that I'm talking about that while being on the other side of the world of you guys, and actually making bridges, because this is what art is made for. And I think by actually collectively moving forward and healing, I think we can benefit and create a beautiful network around the world.
Thank you so much to both of you, Ivan and Roman, for joining me today for this discussion. I also want to thank the other filmmakers in the set for their contribution, as well as our technical support for this Q&A and Lay. Just a reminder that Viet Film Fest at Home runs through Sunday, October 19th, and we encourage you to take a look at the remainder of our catalog there. On behalf of VFF and VAALA, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.
Thank you so much.